Did you know? Square-Enix officially announced a remake of Final Fantasy VII in 2001 for the PlayStation 2, along with remakes of Final Fantasies VIII and IX. There's been numerous plans for remakes over the years, including this one, but the projects were ultimately shelved. According to Final Fantasy VII's original director and co-writer Yoshinori Kitase, the reason they didn't remake the game sooner was the massive workload required to bring the game up to par for modern gaming sensibilities. Although Square-Enix could have just remastered the graphics of the original game and left everything else untouched, the team refused to go down this route. Kitase saw that the gaming landscape had vastly changed since the original title's release, and if they were going to remake the game, they had to do it from the ground up. At E3 2005, Square demonstrated the power of the PlayStation 3 and their new Crystal Tools engine by showcasing a tech demo of what Final Fantasy VII might look like if it were made from the ground up on PlayStation 3. This led to speculation that Final Fantasy VII was actually being remade for the PS3. This was further fueled by the game's 10th anniversary coming up in 2007, which seemed like the perfect time for a remake. However, Square-Enix repeatedly denied any project was in the works. The fan outcry at least made one thing clear: players desperately wanted a remake. In 2014, Kitase commented that a remake would take a huge effort from Square, which sparked more rumors. Industry insider Verendis seemingly confirmed the game's development in a post on NeoGAF, and as VGLeaks.com pointed out, NeoGAF mods generally ban users for posting unfounded information. This means that Verendis likely verified his claim with the mods behind the scenes, giving weight to the claim. The rumors were finally put to rest at E3 2015, where Square officially announced Final Fantasy VII Remake. Tetsuya Nomura, who served as character design and battle visual director on the original game, demanded that a Final Fantasy VII Remake should go all out or not be made at all. Otherwise, their remake would hardly be any better than the 2013 HD port already available on the PS4. It wasn't until Kitase's team finished work on the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy that they were willing to take on such a large project again. The decision to remake Final Fantasy VII wasn't just a matter of timing, though. According to Nomura, the original team's mortality was a major factor as well. He confessed, "Of all the staff that worked on the original, I'm the youngest one. I'm 45 years old now. If we continued on without doing a remake, Kitase and co-writer Kazushige Nojima are well older than me. So yeah, if we kept on delaying the remake, the thought occurred to us that we might have to pass this on to a younger generation, without the original developers taking part. It doesn't seem like such a grand intention, but we wanted to do it with the original members." Although Kitase was closely involved with the remake throughout its development, he stepped down from the role of director and instead served as a producer. In his place, Square-Enix gave the mantle to Nomura without even telling him. On the other hand, Nomura simply assumed Kitase would be the director since he directed the original game. Nomura became suspicious when Kitase repeatedly approached him for direction on elements of the game during the pre-production. Nomura told Famitsu, "That was really unusual." So then one day, when I was checking a video of the game's internal presentation, at the end it says Director Tetsuya Nomura on there. I was surprised. I called up Kitase and told him, "It says here that I'm the director." He said to me, "Of course you are." That's when I first realized, oh, I'm the director, so that's why Kitase kept asking me all that stuff. Kitase thought I'd know I was the director without needing to be told. Almost as soon as development began, the team hit a roadblock. It quickly became clear that converting everything from the original game into a single modern AAA title would be impossible, at least not without cutting large amounts of content. To combat this, it was decided the remake would become a multi-part series. Nomura and Kitase originally planned on adding a subtitle to the game's name, but eventually opted against it as they feared people would assume it was a sequel or a spin-off rather than an actual remake. The team ultimately chose to name the game simply Final Fantasy VII Remake. Kitase knew they made the right choice when he heard the audience's cheers reach a crescendo when the word remake came on screen during the title's world premiere at E3 2015. When Nomura officially assumed the director's chair, he decided to watch through several playthroughs of the original PlayStation game online. He noticed that it generally took around 10 hours to complete the Midgar section, but many players wanted to explore the city more than the game allowed. Worse still, he was unsatisfied by how little gamers experienced the upper city compared to the slums. In light of this, this, Nomura wanted to vastly flesh out the entirety of Midgard, from the upper city down to the lives of the city's citizens themselves. To realize this, the remake's visual department was asked, how would Midgard look if it existed in real life? Environment director Takako Miyake similarly decided to re-examine Midgard from the original PlayStation game. She paid close attention to areas that were just off-screen, glossed over in scene transitions, or outright left up to the player's imagination, and tried to fill them in to make a believable city. Meanwhile, the team considered reusing character models from the Final Fantasy VII Advent Children movie, but the models were nearly a decade old by the time development of the remake began. Although cutting edge at the time of the movie's release in 2005, the team wasn't as impressed with the models anymore and took the opportunity to redesign the characters from scratch once again. Modern technology would give the team more freedom, as the original PlayStation hardware dictated how certain characters looked, such as Aerith, whose dress was designed to lower the amount of polygons on screen. However, Nomura noticed that if the characters were drawn photorealistically, they lost their distinctive charm, so he tried to strike a balance between realistic and stylized designs. Interestingly, the team also planned to cast the same voice actors from Advent Children in the remake. However, the roles for the game's characters were ultimately recast. Fleshing out the cast's personalities also compelled Remake's lead writer Kazushige Nojima to rework the originally silent Cloud Strife. Nojima considered how Cloud's backstory would impact the character's nature, including how they'd interact with friends, strangers, and the world around him, as Nojima wrote new lines of dialogue. The team also had to decide what would carry over from the original game and what needed retuning due to changes in social norms over the last 2 decades. While some fans have expressed concerns that the first entry of the Final Fantasy VII Remake series only covers the Midgard section of the original game, the developers aim to create enough content to be on par with Final Fantasy XIII. In fact, Square-Enix weren't able to fit the entire remake onto a single disc, leading the team to fill 2 whole Blu-ray discs of content. Nomura commented, "Even in this Midgard portion alone, the density and volume are so great that I had to give the team directions to lighten them." Nomura also realized that although many players of the remake will be fans of the original game, the remake will also be the first time many others experience the world of Final Fantasy VII. With that in mind, Nomura set out to make a game that'd be loved by both new and old fans alike. This directly influenced the decision to rework the game's combat system. Nomura felt that giving players complete real-time control of their characters would make for a more engaging and immersive experience than the original's traditional turn-based combat system. On the other hand, Nomura knew the remake wouldn't be a true Final Fantasy game without the stats, levels, gauges, and other RPG mechanics from the original as well. The team's first big challenge was making a battle system that blended modern action gameplay with traditional RPG mechanics. Nomura was especially inspired by his work on the Final Fantasy Dissidia series while developing the remake's combat system, as he felt Dissidia best represented what epic battles should look and feel like in modern Final Fantasy games. Moreover, Nomura deemed that a majority of players would be more familiar with Dissidia's combat over turn-based systems. With seamless transitions between exploration and combat, the remake's music department had to create a dynamic audio system. This system shifts the game's soundtrack to match whatever's happening on screen. This required the soundtrack to be immensely expanded upon, as each segment needs several different versions of every song, each with similar compositions, tempos, and melodies, but differing arrangements. The game syncs up every version of the song in the background, but constantly fades in and out between whatever rendition best reflects what's happening on screen. Nevertheless, having to compose new music for the remake left the music team with big shoes to fill. Fortunately, Final Fantasy VII Remake marks the return of composer Nobuo Uematsu. It wasn't just the fans who were surprised to learn about the return of the series' famous composer though, as news caught developers completely off guard as well. When Kitase reached out to Uematsu, he never expected to receive a call back, as the two hadn't worked together since Final Fantasy X, and Uematsu's freelance career outside of the Final Fantasy series had taken off long since then. Nevertheless, Uematsu heeded the call with a new original theme titled Hollow. Additionally, Uematsu even helped Square-Enix choose a new composer to help fill in the remake soundtrack, personally recommending Masashi Hamauzu. Hamauzu had worked on the score of the original Final Fantasy VII, producing the choral parts of the soundtrack, directing recordings, and even singing in the choir himself at times. Although he had retired, he jumped at the chance to co-compose the remake when he was offered the role. Hamauzu stated, "I got to work with many of the original team again, such as Mr. Kitase, Mr. Toriyama, and Mr. Uematsu, and it really feels like time has started to flow backwards, but I feel that I've managed to somehow write music that very much has the final ethos of Final Fantasy behind it." On March 30th, 2020, Square-Enix announced that gamers living in Europe and Australia would get physical copies of the remake early. This was due to COVID-19, with Square-Enix shipping the game early so that the pandemic didn't halt Final Fantasy VII Remake's distribution. Did you also know that the PlayStation 2's iToy peripheral caused chaos for the development of Little Big Planet? Or that the Grand Theft Auto series was heavily censored in various ways in Germany? For more facts, check out the Did You Know Gaming video on the PlayStation 2.